Hello and welcome. My name is Zaffar Iqbal and you are watching the Mojo Story. Prime Minister Modi will shortly be landing in Moscow, making his first bilateral visit to Russia since he became the Prime Minister for the third term. Now, this underscores the importance of India Russia ties, especially in the fields of energy and defense. New Delhi would also seek to ensure that China does not become a factor in that relationship. Now, Prime Minister Modi will also be meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The two leaders have met 16 times since Prime Minister Modi became the Prime Minister in 2014. But this is the first meeting since Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022. That's provoked uh, uh, wide-ranging Western reactions and sanctions on Russia. To speak on this, we're joined by an eminent panel. We're joined by Ambassador Gurjit Singh. Welcome to the show, sir. We're also joined by Major General Dhruv Katoch, a defense analyst. He also joins us on the show, and Zaffar Choudhary, a journalist and a commentator. Welcome all to the show. If I may start with you first, Ambassador, how is this Prime Minister Modi's decision to break the tradition? Generally, the Prime Minister goes to the neighboring countries first, but this is breaking the tradition and going to Russia for a bilateral meeting.
Well, I think the most of the neighbors that he wanted to meet, he had already met at his inauguration. And I think the fact that the Russian president was free now was an important way to get this meeting finally to happen, which has not happened for 3 years. So I think it is scheduling
Right.
rather than any message. I mean, you can read more than that. You can say it's also happening alongside the NATO summit. So I don't
Right.
think that messaging is important. The important point is they wanted to have the summit with Putin. The timing was available and they went ahead and did it.
Yeah. But nevertheless, it's breaking the tradition, whatever be the reasons. But Major General Dhruv Katoch, significant visit in terms of India's defense strategy. India is buying a lot of equipment from Russia, the anti-missile missile defense systems, the fighter jets. So very significant. If we talk about specifically about the sphere of defense.
Thank you, Zafar. Yes, this visit is very significant as the way I have looked at it. And while the ambassador is correct that when when you're looking at signaling, the fact that the prime minister doesn't visit the immediate neighbors first, I really don't think that is of consequence. But
Yeah.
I do think that the very fact that he is visiting Russia now and meeting with President Putin is sending a very wide message across the world, especially to the Western Bloc. And I think that strategic messaging is also important because for a very long time the West is trying to trap India into their sphere of influence, and that sort of foreign policy India has left behind from 2014 onwards. We have de-hyphenated our policies. So it is not that we are going to toe the American line or the Western line or the Russian line. We are going to toe the Indian line, and I think it is in our interest now to meet uh, with the Russian president at this point of time. The visit has the scheduling has so taken place, and the ambassador I totally agree with what he has said. Now, as far as India is concerned, I think there are three or four very important issues which I think need to be addressed. One is our very strong defense cooperation, which has been there for many, many decades now. Now, why this is important is because we have got a lot of legacy equipment which still which is from Russia, and that equipment has to be maintained. That is one. Secondly, we are looking at the upper technology equipment, the S-400, which we have bought, and the Sukhoi 57, which may be on the anvil. The Sukhoi fleet, as far as the Indian Air Force is concerned, is aging. The AMCA, which is to be coming up, the advanced medium multi-role combat aircraft, which is to come up, that will take some time. You require something in the interim, and the Sukhoi 57 is a fifth generation aircraft that may actually fit in. Whether that will be spoken of or not, that we will see. So defense is going to form a very important component, but also along with defense, I think energy is going to be very important. You see, as far as India is concerned, the when we are taking oil from Russia, that is going to be a very important component. You are getting it at a rate that is cheaper than what we were otherwise got it. So it's going to be a huge saving to the Indian exchequer. And this is where India has taken a totally neutral, totally different stance, because the West wants us to sort of, continue with the sanctions which they have imposed. That suits American interest. That doesn't suit Indian interest. So this messaging is also there that, listen, as far as Russia is concerned, it's an old friend. We will continue to do business with them. As far as America is concerned, NATO is concerned, Europe is concerned, they are also old friends. We will continue to do business with them also. One is not mutually exclusive to the other. It is dehyphenated. We will deal with Russia on its terms. We will deal with the US and Europe on its terms. But the terms will ultimately be what is in India's terms. So Indian interest, I think, is going to be held paramount. And that I think is the real significance of this visit. That messaging that Indian interests come first. That message has gone clearly across the world. Zafar.
Zafar Saab, if I may come to you, what General Saab is saying, that India is, of course, looking at its own interests, particularly defense, energy, and at the same time sending across a message that India is independent as far as its foreign policy is concerned. But this comes in the backdrop of what's happening in Ukraine. Remember, Prime Minister Modi told Putin that this is not an era of war, and that was not long time ago. Do you think that time things have changed, that India has also evolved to the changing situation and try to assert itself as an independent player, but at the same time try and do provide some sort of a role as far as this war is concerned between Russia and Ukraine?
I think India's independent positioning is very important. That's what Prime Minister Modi has been doing. And to send across a message that our foreign policy is independent of what the Western world might be thinking. So ever since the 2002 February, this Russia-Ukraine war, India has been positioning itself as independent of what is the West's perspective on the war.
Yeah.
So some of the strategic experts say that India is also benefiting from the trouble in the Europe by way of, that we have been able to lift the crude oil at a very discounted price, despite, a lot of annoyance from the West. So in a number of ways, independent positioning. But I think the kind of global power that India is emerging, there is a scope of doing a lot beyond just, saying that this is not an era of war. There is a scope of doing something, engaging to actually reduce war or to actually end wars. That is where I think the world should be looking at towards India. As far as this current trip is concerned, I think this has to be seen. There is a very interesting proposition behind this. One is that this is a bilateral that has been going on for more than 20 years. This is 22nd bilateral that's happening in Moscow. The last was in New Delhi in 2021. And Prime Minister himself had gone there in September 2019. So this is an ongoing process, as the ambassador said earlier, and the general also echoed, that this is an ongoing process, not to be seen as, something specifically timed to address a particular, global political or diplomatic development that may be going on. But one can't completely overlook its impact on the domestic politics also. If you closely watch the campaign over the last 3-4 months, this was probably for the first time that India's foreign policy, India's positioning in the global arena was extensively being discussed and debated in the election campaign, that look, this could happen only under Modi, that India's profile position is much higher than ever before on the global arena. This NATO, which is a very important international, particularly security grouping, Prime Minister's Moscow visit is almost coinciding with this NATO summit in Washington that is taking off from tomorrow. And one important thing that I cannot completely overlook, that, this has been within 1 month of the inauguration of third term of Prime Minister Modi, the third Modi 3.0. So there has been another major international event very recently, that was the SCO summit in Astana, where India is a very key, very important figure, and India has utilized this platform in the past also to convey to the world the India's growing position on the world platform. The Prime Minister chose to skip the Astana summit and instead sent External Affairs Minister to represent him, and he read out a speech on behalf of the Prime Minister that criticized China and, of course, that criticized Pakistan also. So, Prime Minister wanted to send this message that a platform where Xi Jinping is also present. So, Xi Jinping is China is one of the key drivers of the SCO. So, we want to behave a little independently, not going to be, make our presence more conspicuous at a China-driven platform. That might have come as something of, a little pleasure to the West. But then it was very important to send a quick message to the West that, if you are saying that we are your bulwark against China, that's not the case. You don't want also us to engage with Russia. So we are engaging with Russia on our own terms. So I think that's an important phase in India's diplomacy, an important phase in India's international relations, that to show that courage to be able to conduct our diplomacy entirely on our own terms and not following the Western diktats.
Right.
Yes.
Ambassador Gurjit, interesting point made by Zafar Saab that there are multiple messaging. One, a messaging to the West. Second, a messaging to Russia. Third, a messaging to China. The fact is that Prime Minister didn't go for the SCO meeting, but here he's going for a summit meeting to meet with President Putin. The big question is the China factor. The China factor plays into all these dimensions in one way or the other. Do you think that it's also India's effort to convey to Russia its concerns about China, and also to ensure that that India sends across a message to Russia that it's always the bilateral relationship is of paramount importance and has always been like that?
Indeed, I think you're right on this one. Now, let me explain it. India wants a multipolar world and does not want a bipolar world, in which Russia is an important pole. So therefore, India's relationship with Russia is extremely important for India, just as India's relationship with Europe. But the Ukraine crisis has pushed Russia into Chinese arms and pushed Europe into the US arms. So as a result, the polarization of the world is getting stronger, and India is feeling the heat of losing multipolarity, and therefore this visit to Russia emphasizes the importance of multipolarity. Point two, it is not as if Russia, in response to what India has strategically sided with them or not gone against them on Ukraine, really responded in kind. Russia's position on Pakistan, on Afghanistan, on Indo-Pacific, on SCO, on BRICS, on RIC is at variance with India's. There is no support from Russia on any of these important issues to us. In BRICS, and Zaffarji mentioned SCO, Russia is playing the role of a Chinese poodle. India is isolated. India is standing up for itself. My article has come today on how India deftly used SCO to get its way and not let China carry, but it's a difficult task. Now, what remains is the bilateral relationship. And we have to leverage the bilateral engagement with Russia and persuade them that do not go entirely into Chinese arms, but that is not to our benefit. They must learn to temper China from being anti-Indian rather than simply mutely fall in behind them. I am afraid so far the Russians have not shown any sign other than not suspending defense supplies to us after the Ladakh crisis. But General Saab has pointed out the importance of the defense segment. But I think given the Ukraine crisis, Russia's own abilities to supply defense equipment is coming into doubt. So we have to work with them on what is possible. We must also note that from a time when Russia had over 60% of India's defense market, today it is under 40%. But this under 40% is still extremely important. My final point is on energy. So this fluke of circumstance, which allows us to buy Russian oil and resell it after refining to the rest of the world gives us leverage. But it has totally lopsided the trade relationship. In 2014, India's trade with Russia was barely $10 billion. Now it is $66 billion, of which $4 billion is Indian exports. So this is becoming an unrealistic issue. Once the sanctions are lifted, if and when, this will disappear, this trade. But have we taken advantage of expanding Indian exports to Russia? This is where the Indian private sector falls short, is not doing its work adequately. We must learn to stand up on our own feet and export more to a willing market. The Russians keep complaining there's nothing for us to buy. But other than this, when we talk of climate change, we talk of solar energy. For all our solar modules, we are China dependent. It is only Russia which is providing you civilian nuclear cooperation. 2,000 megawatts to 2 power plants in Kudankulam are Russian. None of the French or German or Canadian or not German, American plants have come on stream. The Russians are the ones contributing to your independent propulsion of energy, which is not based on Chinese sources. So I think this we need to keep in mind. Thank you.
General Saab, important point, trade imbalance. Now this is 60 billion and 5 billion. How is it sustainable if Indian public sector is not up to the mark or raising to that level? How is it going to continue in the long run? This is going to be a prime point of discussion between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin.
You see, the way I've looked at it is, you are absolutely right. There is a huge trade imbalance. But let us look at it this way. India would have been importing that energy anyway. If not from Russia, we'd have taken it from the Saudis and from other countries in the West, where the trade is in dollars. So now, obviously, we cannot do the trade in dollars because of the sanctions. So the other now, are we in a position to really export $60 billion to Russia? No, I don't think so. We haven't. Our industry is nowhere near getting into that level. But I think talks are on with some countries in West Asia, to have a third route, that we pay in a different currency, and we pay in rupee terms. And that is kept in a sort of a basket by which a different sort of a trade module is being carried out. Now, how that works, I think that is something which we have to see. But ultimately, we have to look at different models of carrying out this trade, and it cannot be simply bilateral between Russia and India. It has to be between India, some other countries, and Russia to fill up this gap, to fill up this trade gap. And how that is to be done, I think some work is going on in that. I don't have the complete details, but some work is going on in that, and I think that is going to be. That is something which will come about in future. But for the moment, I think this energy source, Russia as an energy source, is good for India. It has resulted in considerable savings as far as foreign exchange is concerned, and I don't see any let up in this, at least for this year and next year. What happens in 2026, I don't know, but for 2024 and 2025, I don't see any major changes occurring as far as the energy trade is concerned. And I presume by that time, our own people in the finance ministry and the economics department, etc., they have worked out some deal with third countries as to how we can sort out this trade imbalance between India and Russia. Zafar.
Zafar Saab, that Prime Minister Modi, after he becomes the Prime Minister for the third term, picks up Russia as the first country where he flies to and is meeting with President Putin. How do you see the reactions coming from West and other countries? India has an independent foreign policy. It has an equation with Russia. It has an equation with Ukraine. So does it have with America. It's a strategic partner of America. But how difficult or easy it is for India to maintain that balancing act, and will it be able to maintain it for long?
I mean, the summit is not coming all of a sudden. And the India-Russia relationship is also not something, that has come up entirely suddenly and the world started watching that why are they so close to each other. So India and Russia have a very sustainable, very deep bilateral strategic relationship. But this has to be seen in context of the post-Russia-Ukraine war, that then how world wants you to engage with Russia. So because India did not take the kind of stand the West had wanted from India to condemn Russia. India has not condemned Russia. So they are already a little, angry, already a little annoyed with India that they have not, taken that kind of stand. But now India is now coming of its own. You cannot entirely prevent a country of the size, scale, and stature of India from engaging in a relationship with another country on its entirely own terms. But of course, you can remain unhappy here and there. So I was that was interesting to see the statement from the US State Department that was, I think, 15 or 20 days earlier about India and Russia relationship. They said that, yes, look, India and Russia has a trajectory of their own trajectory of relationship, but then US-India relationship is independent of India-Russia. So there is a mutual perspective on democracy, on other historical events, on a number of things. They share their views. So we are able to maintain our independence together. But what happens that US and other Western powers, they have a number of ways to criticize India. They have a number of ways to pinch India. They have a number of ways, to create some noises from the think tanks. They have a number of ways to cause imbalance in the trade, which I'm sure that they will always keep on doing to, keep emerging powers such as India on their sides. But my concern here is not that how US or other Western powers, they view India's warmth towards Russia. My concern here is that what is India getting out of this warmth with Russia, particularly on the trade imbalance. That is huge. I mean, Russia is able to buy just less than 10% of what India is buying from Russia. And to say that we are not producing enough to match Russia's requirements, so then we are not going to scale ourselves up. It's just going to be a superficial kind of thing. Then it matters more in the domestic constituency rather than of any significance at the international, the kind of strategic relationship and the trade relationship that you have. You just make your domestic constituency happy that, look, we are able to take our independent flight to Russia or independent flight to Washington and New York. I think that is where some more, deeper thinking is required, irrespective of how then West is going to react to us.
Right. Ambassador Gurjit Singh, before I come to you, I want to play a sound bite and then come to another important issue. This is the sound bite of Dr. S. Jaishankar. It's about Indians who have been duped into joining the Russian army. Let's first hear what the Minister of External Affairs had to say.
So you also met your Russian counterparts
yesterday.
Yesterday.
Yeah, sure.
And there are multiple issues, but did you raise the issues of India stranded in the conflict?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, and very, very clearly and very strongly. Because, there are a number of Indians who have, in some way or the other, been pressed into service with the Russian army. Now, only when they come back will we know the full circumstances. But whatever the circumstances, to us it is unacceptable that Indian citizens, find themselves in the army of another country in a war zone. So I made it, I told him that, look, we seek your cooperation. You are a friend and partner. We have to find a way by which these people are allowed to return to India as quickly and effectively as possible. I think he appreciated the point. The Foreign Ministry has been speaking to the Russian Defense Ministry in this regard. So I urged him, saying, look, we need a much stronger follow-up because the families are getting very naturally very upset. Many of them have reached out to us. So it is an issue. I mean, I've taken it up. I intend to continue taking it up until all our people who are there come back.
Ambassador Gurjit Singh, the very clear message from India that it's a matter that is taken very seriously. We have been seeing this for many months now. People from Punjab, people from Gujarat, somebody from Kashmir, all of them duped into joining Russian army. They went there as helpers, but they were enlisted in army, sent on the warfare. At least four of them have died. We don't know the story of others. It's a very important issue for India. Do you think Prime Minister Modi will, besides other things, this will be an important focus during this bilateral meeting with President Putin, and he might raise it with the president on his own level, at that level?
Modi government, the welfare of Indians overseas has been a very high priority. So therefore, yes, I certainly believe that after EAM statement, Prime Minister Modi is going to be expecting a response from President Putin. If he does not get a response, he will raise it himself to flag the issue. Now, I see everybody saying that these people were duped into joining the Russian army. Now, I am not sure of the circumstances with this happens. I think we need to be clear that from the states you mentioned, there are illegal migrants entering Europe. The Russian route is one of those routes. In the past,
Right.
when people have gone through Iraq, people have gone through Syria, people have gone through Libya to Europe, they have been caught in those civil wars also and found doing similar work. So, what has happened in Russia, to my mind, is not unusual. What is unusual is that now it's a friendly government with whom we can make a pitch and we are expecting a response. We have already got 10 Indians back. The estimate was that there are about 50 Indians involved in this. So maybe about 30 to 40 more need to be traced and brought back. Thank you.
Janata, what are your thoughts about it? It is an important issue. We have covered this story. I met with some of these families and they are completely broken. They say that we don't know anything. We just get a call at some point in time कि यहाँ पे देखिए फायरिंग हो रही है, गोलियां चल रही है, बम फट रहे हैं, and then the call gets dropped. Understand, it is very difficult to understand their plight, and in the condition that they are, they just want them back. Now they say that they have been taken there, they went there for work, they went there for employment, but they didn't go there to be put on a war front to fight a war. They are not trained soldiers, but they have been given uniform and some basic training and put on the war front.
Zafar, it is quite possible that they would have been duped, but it is also quite possible that they were reasonably aware of where they are going and why they are going. Uh, as far as the Indian person who goes abroad, whether he's going illegally to the United States or to Canada or to Australia or to anywhere else, they know the risks involved. So to say that, they were very innocent and they have just been taken and put into the war zone, I'm inclined to take that with a pinch of salt. So they would have been reasonably aware of what the risk is, what the danger is. But having said that, now that they are in the war zone, and now that it has come into the the public domain, it really impacts the two countries. It impacts the relations between India and Russia. The number of people involved are very small. So if the number of people are involved are very small, I'm quite certain that if this matter comes up, which will come up, I think I see no reason why Prime Minister Modi will not take up this issue with his Russian counterpart. So it is going to come up, and I think the end result of it will be that all these 40 or 50 people which are there, they will be rounded up. They'll be taken back to Moscow or wherever, and from there I think they'll be sent back to India. So I think that process is going to take place, and it doesn't suit either Russia or India to sort of keep them there. Let us say we were talking about 5,000 or 10,000 troops. That is a significant number which can impact the battle. We are talking about a very small group, which is not going to impact the battle in any way. And even otherwise, I think, the way the Russian president has gone to North Korea, and I think the North Koreans will be very happy to give him the number of soldiers they require. So, and there won't be any problem in that as far as the Koreans are concerned. So for these 40 or 50 people, in the war zone, I think we'll get them back. I'm not so sure if all of them will want to come back. I'll also make that statement. But if they wish to come back, I'm quite certain that India will get them back, and they will be back. They'll be back with us very shortly. Zafar.
Zafar, do you agree that they may not have been completely duped? They might have been having some information where they will be landing up finally. The fact also that when we spoke to some of them, my family members, they say that they were taken from Russia to Belarus. There they were told that you don't need a passport, you don't need a visa. But once they reached there, the Belarus police caught them. And that's how they were inducted into Russian army. So it may be a mix of the two. They may not have been entirely knowing how this works, where they are going to land, but they knew that there is some risk involved in all of this. But nevertheless, it is now the responsibility of the state, because their families have approached the state. They have issued video statements from there. So it becomes important for India to respond and to help to get them back.
I think different people reach there. Different people reach there. The mic on, yeah. I think different people reach there in different circumstances. That's an entirely different story. That when do we investigate that? What were the individual circumstances of every person? That which route they took, how they reached there, and what did they know about that? What were they being taken there for? The point that comes to my mind is that it shouldn't have taken Prime Minister's personal visit to Moscow, or External Affairs Minister's personal visit to Moscow, to raise this issue with Russia. I mean, it's been more than 2 years. Some effort should have been taken along the way over the last few months to get these people back to India. There is a wide-ranging concern. So I think it should have happened much before, much earlier, to address this issue. And one does not also know that what is the exact number of these people and in what circumstances they reach there. So I think this is a priority issue. This is an issue of importance. And toward the end, then I think I should also say this thing that for good reason or bad, India helped Russia in very difficult circumstances. It's Russia which is in dire need of friends of the size and stature of India. Not, I mean, it's an imbalance of the current requirement that Russia needs India the more rather than India needing Russia. So I think India should use this opportunity to address all these issues one by one with Russia.
Okay, before we conclude, we have the last word from each of you. Ambassador Saab, if I may start with you, how do you see this visit now? Now, Prime Minister Modi will be landing there. He'll be having one-on-one with the president, and there's a private dinner also. There are cultural exchanges also. On the whole, how do you see this visit, and what are the expectations of India from this visit at the end of the day?
So we have a special and privileged strategic partnership. I would like an emphasis on all these words. I would like to see some special treatment to India, as Zafar mentioned. I would like to see some privilege in response to what we have supported Russia. And I would like to see some strategic intent. You can't have Russia taking India's support for India's reasons, but on the rest of the world, you oppose us. Secondly, certainly with China, while they have a dependence bilaterally, they should show some resilience to say that the India relationship cannot be mortgaged to their relationship with China. And finally, I think there will be a diversity of MOUs which will come out of this visit. I think it's a very well prepared visit. And therefore, you will see diversity, intensity, and variety, not quite like what it was, but keeping the current circumstances in view. Thank you.
General Saab?
That Russia needs India more than India needs Russia. That is very well put. That is true. It also goes for the United States and the West. We don't need them that much. They need us today. And I think we have to play this correctly, which is why I think our foreign policy has matured tremendously. We have deaffinated the whole business. So our relationship with the United States is not dependent on how our relationship with Russia. Both can be strong, and both will continue. This was signaling. The visit of the Prime Minister of Russia was signaling, but we are going to have a Quad meeting later. And that is also going to be signaling. That's a signal which is going to Russia and China and that bloc. So I think the signaling is very clear. India is an independent country. We have got our own independent foreign policy. We have got our strategic autonomy to follow what is in Indian interest. And I think that is going to be played out. But I think it behoves both Russia and the United States to be very sensitive to India's concerns and to India's interests. Otherwise, in the long term, I think they will lose out. Zafar.
Right. Zafar, last word to you before we wrap up.
So I would only like to reiterate that a stage has come in the India's foreign policy and diplomacy that we have outgrown the initial excitement of sending across message to our domestic constituency, to our immediate neighbor that look, we are now a grown-up country. We have our independent trajectories. We can build the relationship the way we want. I think now it's time to take back from all those relationships to India's benefit. All those political messages have been sent. Now the world understands who we are.
Yeah.
Our domestic constituency also understands who we are. Now it's time to get some practical dividends out of these relationships. And it's where Russia matters a lot. And this opportunity should be utilized in that direction.
Right, absolutely. All eyes on the big summit meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin. We'll be closely following that story. But for now, thanks so much to all our panelists for joining us today. And thanks for watching the Mojo Story.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.